No one has ever flown. I'm the first.
On this episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence, all may not be as it seems when a sympathetic female chimpanzee investigates a human's discovery of the secret of non-powered flight. Well, here we are at the final episode of the 1974 television series, The Planet of the Apes. Episode 14, Up Above the World So High, aired on December 20th, 1974. It's a final send-off to the fugitive team of Roddy McDowall as the renegade chimpanzee Galen, Ron Harper as Astronaut Alan Virdon, and James Naughton as Astronaut Peter Burke. We also say one last goodbye to Mark Lenard as the irascible gorilla, General Urko. Booth Colman as the orangutan Council President Zaius also appears for his very last episode. It's also the last time we get to see stunt extras Ron Stein and Eldon Burke in their gorilla costumes. I recognized the name of director John Meredith Lucas from his credits as the producer of 10, and director of 3 episodes of Star Trek. 2 Trek episodes he directed are among my favorites. The Ultimate Computer, featuring the M5 Multitronics unit, with regards to Captain Dunzel, and the Enterprise incident, featuring the lovely Joanne Linville as a Romulan commander who has her eyes set on Mr. Spock. And who could forget how he directed the camera to reveal the alluring body of Franz Nguyen in Elan of Troyes. When tacked on after Tomorrow's Tide, this episode forms the second half of the 1980s TV movie Farewell to the Planet of the Apes. The 2 episodes share the same Pacific Coast filming location. As usual, I've downloaded an available script to use as a reference, but I dare not research any further for fear of spoiling the viewing experience. I'll caution my viewers that there will be spoilers from here on in. So find a source to view the episode before I take flight into my review of Up Above the World So High. We open the episode back at the east beach of Abalone Cove, near Portuguese Point, where Tomorrow's Tide was filmed. Some prop plants bearing tropical fruit have been placed along the walkway that leads down to the beach. Galen picks some of that fruit, and looking up, he sees what he believes to be a flying reptile. He calls out to Virdon and Burke, who can hardly believe their eyes, as they see a hang glider floating high above them. Galen is confused by their reactions.
Are you frightened?
What? Seeing a man fly?
A man? Oh, humans can't fly.
Then Burke spots a couple of gorillas approaching on horseback. The fugitives take cover behind some nearby rocks. Those gorillas then spot the glider as it appears to crash out of view. While the apes climb the hillside to investigate, Virdon, Burke, and Galen skedaddle. Galen says they'd better find the flying human before the gorillas do. And once again, I'm flabbergasted to see that Virdon can outpace those mounted gorillas. He's the first to reach the glider, which has crashed into a tree. It's piloted by a human named Lyric, who's portrayed by Frank Aletter.
Frank Aletter was born on January 14, 1926 in Queens, New York. He studied acting at Manhattan's Dramatic Workshop. He made his Broadway debut in 1950, filling in as Stefanowski during a production of Mr. Roberts. And he went on to appear as Gerhardt in the 1955 film based on that Broadway play. The theater also led to TV appearances, and when the television industry moved to the West Coast, so did Frank Aletter. He was once married to every young man's 1960s feline fantasy, Lee Merriweather, Catwoman from the 1966 film, Batman the Movie. He was best known for his many television appearances from 1956 to 1988, but Frank also did a few more films. He appeared as Lieutenant Commander Thomas in the 1970 epic, Tora Tora Tora. He was elected vice president of the Film Actors Guild in 1987. Frank Letter died at the age of 83 on May 13, 2009.
Virdon helps Lyric down from the tree. Now, they have a brief conversation about why he crashed, but it's cut short. Burke tells them that the gorillas are approaching.
He got away. But we have the thing that flies.
I think that was Ron Stein. We do a quick cut to a model of the glider. They're testing the design in a makeshift wind tunnel. The two astronauts are impressed that it flew at all. They also try to impress upon him that he's lucky he wasn't killed.
You have a superstitious fear of flying.
I've got a lot of fears, but that's not one of them. I guarantee you'll kill yourself.
Now, how do you know?
He dismisses their worries and claims that there's no way they could know anything about it. As far as he knows, no human has ever flown before. Then he accuses the astronauts of wanting to steal his invention. As if. Burke explains that if they helped him with his design, they'd only be setting him up to be shot down by the gorillas. I like to agree, but I've seen those gorillas shoot. They offer to help move the inventor farther from town. There's a place he knows of. The apes won't go there because of some gorilla superstition that they never do explain. While the humans are discussing how many trips it will require, Galen notices an interesting solid mass. Lyric says that he found it on the beach after a lightning strike.
Oh, sand must have melted. A hunk of glass formed. I'll polish it, Galen, and show you what you can do with it. If you don't mind, Lord.
I had to look that up, and yes, it is a real thing. We cut to the gorilla trooper dragging the glider back to his headquarters. Then, back at Central City, Urko presents the glider's wreckage to the council.
You expect us to believe a human flew?
My troopers saw it.
Something even apes cannot do.
Colman, I expect you to believe Konak. My garrison commanders are not in the habit of coming here to address the council for the purpose of lying.
That orangutan is played by William Beckley, who'd performed in scores of television roles during his 3 decades of acting, beginning in the early 1960s. A female chimpanzee shows a keen interest in the supposed flying device. She says that the human's idea for achieving flight might serve the apes.
Ridiculous. How could a human idea serve us?
She's Carcia, played by actress Joanna Barnes.
Joanna Barnes was born in Boston on November 15, 1934. She attended private schools, first Milton Academy, and then she went on to Smith College as an English major, graduating in 1956. She set out to be a writer, but when doing research for a magazine article on filmmaking, she set her sights on acting. She apparently had no trouble making the transition, because she immediately began appearing on TV and in films. She signed a contract at Columbia Pictures. Becoming an actor got her dropped from the Boston Social Register. She performed in more than 20 films and scores of television shows. She played Vicki Robinson, a gold digger who gets between Maureen O'Hara and Brian Keith in Walt Disney's The Parent Trap in 1961. She later played Vicki Blake, the mother of another gold digger character in the 1998 remake of The Parent Trap starring Lindsay Lohan. She never gave up on writing, putting out several books and continuing to write newspaper columns. Joanna Barnes died at the age of 87 on April 29, 2022.
Carcia shares some little-known knowledge with the members of the council. Evidence seems to show that their ape ancestors may have been able to fly.
What?
Urko argues for the death of the human who built the glider, which he calls a worthless toy.
If flying were worthless, Would our ancestors have engaged in it?
We cut to Virdon carrying a rolled pack across a wooden footbridge. Then he approaches a fortified area. It reminds me of the hospital compound from episode 10, The Interrogation. Burke is there, attempting to cut through a branch using a stone. He's not having much luck. He's more interested in polishing the glass they'd discovered.
I can't wait to see Galen's face when he first looks through a magnifying glass.
Just then, Galen comes running in, shouting that Lyric has been arrested. Virdon is surprised that the apes didn't kill Lyric.
Well, the only thing I can think of is, they want to make a spectacle of him.
How?
Public execution.
In Act 2, we see the same horse-drawn carriage that Galen's mother had used in The Interrogation. It's had a roof rack installed to carry some luggage, but it appears to be identical in all other respects. The human driver is played by stunt coordinator and occasional actor Glenn Wilder. He climbs down to open the back of the carriage for his passenger, Carcia. A gorilla escorts her to the office of the local gorilla commander named Konag. He's played by Martin Brooks.
Actor Martin Brooks was born Martin Ballroom in the Bronx neighborhood of New York City on November 30, 1925. Martin was 10 years old when his family moved to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. After high school, he joined the U.S. Army and became a paratrooper with the 11th Airborne Division. He was awarded a Purple Heart for injuries he received while fighting during World War II. After the war, Martin attended Penn State University and he enrolled in a dramatic workshop in New York City. His off-Broadway role in Outside the Door earned him a Best Actor award, and a producer suggested that he change his last name. On Broadway, Martin Brooks performed in many successful productions, earning a Theatre World Award for his role in Enemy of the People. He made the transition to television, where his most recognizable TV character was Dr. Rudy Wells, a bionic implant scientist. Brooks portrayed Dr. Wells on a total of 90 television episodes, 45 on The $6 Million Man, and another 45 on The Bionic Woman. Martin Brooks retired after 45 years on television and he died at the age of 90 on December 7, 2015.
Carcia congratulates the commander for capturing the human. I don't know why, but I find Joanna Barnes' voice a bit too sultry for an ape. Konag seems disinterested and dismissive. He makes it known that they'd roughed up the prisoner, and Carcia comes back with a left-handed compliment.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be much more cooperative thanks to your handling.
It looks as though Konag's about to react to that remark when the door opens. It's Carcia's driver, and he's carrying all her bags.
What's all this?
Oh, some things for my use with the human, and the others for my personal comfort since I'll be staying a while.
It was Konag's understanding that she was only staying for a short while.
We have no guest facilities. This is a troop garrison.
I don't mind the inconvenience. This will be perfectly adequate.
She has her driver put her things on a stand.
These are my quarters.
She says that she will tell Urko and the council how very helpful he's been.
Now, I shall require a room.
Her servant will help him move his things out. Then she dismisses the gorilla, and she takes a seat behind his desk. Later, she goes to the cell block where the prisoner is being held. She introduces herself to Ron Stein's character, and meanwhile, Eldon Burke's gorilla character is beating the prisoner. She orders the guard to tend to the man's hurts and then bring him to her. We cut to Burke casually walking through the village. He's trying not to draw undue attention to himself. He admires the carriage before addressing its driver.
Gee, it's a nice carriage.
Yeah.
You driving?
Yeah.
Burke baits the driver into talking by claiming that nothing ever happens in the village. Something has happened. He finds out that a female ape named Carcia is in the village to talk to a human. Back inside, Lyric wants to know why the female chimpanzee told the guard not to beat him.
I refuse to be questioned by a human for whom I requested decent treatment.
I'm sorry.
He admits to knowing the secret of flying, and when asked if he could prove that a human or an ape could fly, he only admits that he can fly. He vows that if he gets out and the gorillas don't kill him, he will fly. We cut to Galen in an office, telling a gorilla about a flying reptile. The gorilla says that Konag is out on an inspection tour.
There's got to be somebody beside you.
She's busy.
Is she? In a garrison?
Visiting from Central City.
Carcia isn't going to be another one of Galen's old flames, is she? I sure hope not. He decides to wait in the office. Meanwhile, Carcia is using her female charms to urge that human to construct another one of his flying contraptions. Back at the office, Galen is complaining about the wait when Carcia enters. Then Galen, using a fake name, starts to flirt with the female scientist. He calls her charming.
Do come in.
As the mutual praise keeps piling up, I wonder just who's playing whom here. She says that the human says he can demonstrate flight in 5 days. Ooh, Galen says he'd like to see that too. Back with Virdon and Burke, Galen briefs the astronauts on his conversation with Carcia. They ask if she might let Lyric live even if his demonstration is a failure. Galen seems to think so.
She's very sympathetic. I know she'd want to protect him. Yes, she's that kind of ape.
Because Lyric's design had a few flaws, the astronauts decide to help. Virdon says that they'll build a functional glider.
Hey, I'm not sure we know enough to make a functional glider out of that junk we got.
Then we see 2 gliders taking shape through a montage of clips. Virdon and Burke have a pot of flour and tree sap cooking over a fire. Galen sniffs at it and tastes it.
That's the best we could do. It's called glue.
Galen, hold that a second, will you?
I can't.
Why not?
My fingers are stuck together.
The fugitives somehow get their version of the glider to the top of Portuguese Point for a test flight. Virdon subtly mentions that Galen will be the one testing the flyer. That doesn't go over very well with Galen.
You mean I take off? Oh, thank you very much. This all has been fascinating.
Galen.
The 2 humans explain to Galen that it would be far more dangerous for one of them to test the glider. Now, if an ape would look up and see a human flying, they would shoot the human. If that same ape would look up and see another ape flying, he might be shocked, but he probably wouldn't shoot. Galen refuses, and I really like the editing done here.
It is out of the question. I refuse. I absolutely put my foot down.
Okay, now use your foot to kick off, right?
Then we see a real glider stunt pilot take flight. They cut between the costumed stunt flyer and the close-ups of Galen hanging from the grounded flyer. They should have made more contoured feet for Galen. I find these flat-soled, foot-shaped boots just a bit distracting in this scene. Galen gets the hang of it eventually.
He likes it.
Then he lands on a rocky beach. We cut to later. Galen is masquerading as Protus. He admires the glider that Lyric's built, and I'm rather surprised that Lyric doesn't give Galen's ruse away. Maybe all apes look alike to him. Galen hams it up as usual. He says that it's hard to believe that one can actually fly. It's funny since he's already done it himself. He feigns excitement.
Garcia, I'll be with you in 1 minute. I do want to take one last look at this marvelous bird.
Very well.
So he did recognize Galen. The two argue back and forth about whether or not Lyric's glider will fly. The plan was to deliver their glider to Lyric, but they need 2 more days. Lyric accuses Galen of wanting to steal his idea, so Galen can be the first to fly. If he only knew. Can someone explain to me why the astronauts are trying to help this crazy guy? Because it doesn't make sense to me. Garcia comes back looking after her friend Protus. Galen moves to join her, but not before he gestures toward Lyric to indicate that he is not pleased with the man's stubbornness. Late that night, the astronauts are working to fold their glider. Galen thinks the situation is hopeless. He says that even if they could get it into shape by morning, they couldn't deliver and assemble it in time. Then Virdon thinks of a new approach.
You know, we're going about this whole thing the wrong way. I mean, the first order of business shouldn't be to deliver a glider that will fly. The first thing we gotta do is to stop a glider that won't fly.
The next morning, Galen is back at the workshop in the guise of Protus. He's brought along that piece of glass that Lyric had found on the beach. But, now that Burke has polished it up, it serves as a magnifying glass. Galen hams it up while giving a demonstration. With a bit of distraction, he mounts the magnifying glass and aims it at the glider. Then he continues to tout the advantages of his expander to his captive audience. Garcia gets so caught up in her appreciation of science that she doesn't notice a fire starting behind her back. And by the time Lyric notices, his precious glider is almost totally engulfed in flames. That should set him back a few days. Galen had better get his magnifying glass out of there, though, before they figure out what caused the blaze. Oops, too late. Garcia has it figured out. Luckily, Galen turns it around to his advantage.
I cannot take credit for this. No. You will be known as the ape who made fire with an expander.
Thank you.
Then, Galen just happens to have 2 servants who can provide everything they need to fix it again. And that's not suspicious in the least. As Virdon and Burke are wheeling their materials in, a gorilla briefly stops them before allowing them to pass. Meanwhile, Galen and Garcia are getting pretty cozy. He's reading a book she'd recommended. Back in the workshop, a gorilla lets the astronauts in with their supplies. Lyric is unappreciative.
Do you hear this guy? Oh, Alan, what are we doing here?
I've been wondering that from the start.
You know, Lork, we could have let the troopers pick you up when you crashed. You were very clever. You wanted to find out what I knew about flight first.
The astronauts are about to take a hike when Lyric has a change of heart. He doesn't know why they're helping him, but he's grateful for the assistance.
I don't know why you're helping me. I don't know why Garcia is, but I don't care. As long as I get up there just once, I don't care what happens after that.
Meanwhile, Galen and Garcia are getting even closer. Now that he's finished reading her book, they share some thoughts on chimpanzee superiority.
I wanted you to read that book. I wanted you to know how we feel.
That was my thought. We? It's such an intimate scene between Galen and Garcia. It appears as though they're about to kiss when the door suddenly swings open and Konag enters the room.
What do you want?
He states that Urko wants the human executed if there's any delay beyond the next day.
And you might want to arrange to have your things taken out by then.
Once again, the chimps seem to be about to kiss when there's another interruption. Well, at least they knocked this time. I find it odd that when Konag had stood in that very same doorway just a moment ago, we could see him very clearly. But now, when Virdon and Burke enter the room, they appear in silhouette. I wonder why. They were ordered to report to Protus when they were done. The two confirm that everything is ready for the next day's demonstration. Burke spies an ancient military crate with some stenciled markings on it. He steps forward. Virdon notices too. They're trying to come up with an excuse to get Galen out of the room so they can discuss their discovery in private.
Well, there's something I'm trying to remember. We wanted to talk to you about, sir.
Galen dismisses them, telling the two to come back when they remember what they wanted to say.
Yeah, go. You can come back later.
Then Burke mentions something about the last load wrecked their cart. Once again, Galen tells them to go.
Yeah, go!
After they're out the door, he excuses himself to go teach them some manners. In the outer office, they discuss what's in the crate.
What do you think's in that box in your girlfriend's room?
What box? Green one. The one that says Fragmentation Cosmoline Pact.
Oh, yes, I wondered about that, but I didn't want to pry.
Yeah, fragmentation bombs.
Now that begs the question, what is the chimpanzee Carcia doing with a case of aerial munitions?
They were customarily dropped from airplanes.
This episode just took a very dark turn. To me, it seems just as controversial as episode 13 had been. And that one was either preempted or delayed, depending on the viewing market. Galen now has to go back in there and pretend like nothing has changed. He eventually gets around to mentioning the crate of munitions among Carcia's effects.
There are bombs in this box.
To eliminate.
With Lyric's glider, she says, they can drop the bombs from overhead without being seen or heard. Then, with Urko, his troops, and the Council eliminated, the chimpanzees will take control of the world. So that's why she's so determined to keep Lyric alive until he can teach them how to fly.
It's perfectly clear.
Lyric is asleep when Virdon and Burke rush in. They need to get him out, but he's more concerned with his glider than he is his own life. Galen tells them that the guards are coming. Burke smashes a board across the gorilla guard's body. That guard recovers quickly, and he throws Burke. They go at it some more until Burke can get away. When the stubborn gorilla comes up for more, Galen whacks him over the head, knocking the guard out. They're all about to escape when they're confronted by two additional armed gorilla guards. They overpower those two guards, and they proceed down the corridor toward the exit. Unfortunately, one of the guards recovers in time to grab his rifle and shoot, missing. His second shot hits Lyric in the hand. The astronauts make a run for it, leaving Galen and Lyric standing in the corridor. Carcia opens a door and she sees the two.
You chose a human in preference to me?
In preference to what you're planning.
Have you ever dated a psycho woman?
Take him away!
She has the two locked up. Later, in Konag's office, he and Carcia go back and forth about what each one expects to happen next. He wants to cancel the test flight, But Carcia says that it will proceed as scheduled. He says that he will execute the human and the renegade ape first thing in the morning. She wants them alive, at least until after the test flight. He insists that he's going to execute them both.
A dead man can't operate those wings.
One of your troopers will take the human's place.
Risk the life of a gorilla in a pointless experiment? Absolutely not.
He's insistent, but she stares him down. In a prison cell, Galen is tending to Lyric's injury. The human apologizes, saying that it's all his fault. Galen agrees. Lyric says that he won't be able to fly with his hand all numb from his wound. Then the two start bickering about the man's obsession with flying. Virdon uses a slingshot to shoot them a note that's wrapped around a stone. As Galen is reading the note, a guard noisily unlocks their cell door. Galen quickly swallows the note to hide it. They haul the glider out to a cliff on a cart. It's a beautiful shot. Konag and another gorilla are out in front on horseback, and they lead a parade consisting of Carcia's carriage, the cart hauling the glider, and 2 lines of 4 gorillas each, fanned out to form a V. With Inspiration Point in the background, a hazy mist of fog blankets the California coast. At Konag's signal, the procession comes to a halt. Ron Stein is the first to dismount. He goes to direct the unloading of the glider. Konag walks back to Carcia's carriage. That's not her regular driver, by the way.
I don't care what happens to the human, but I want that flying device returned safely, if in fact it can fly.
Konag posts his guards. Then he calls to a gorilla he calls Robar, telling him to bring the human.
Bring the human here.
Konag points out his troopers on the ground. He tells Lyric to stay within the boundary of those troopers, or he'll be shot down. Then Galen points out Lyric's bandage. He certainly can't fly using just one hand. Konag then announces that the test is canceled, while Carcia insists that the flight go on. But who would fly it? Konag refuses to risk the life of an ape. Galen uses that cue to interject with a little bit of reverse psychology.
You wait a minute. It is out of the question. It is absolutely ridiculous. Even if I were willing, I tell you, I don't know how to fly.
Will the wings support both you and him?
Oh, yes, they might.
But no.
Well, Konag, it seems we have solved 2 problems. I want to see if those wings can carry extra weight, and you want to spare any of your troopers the risk of flying.
But I protest.
And if they fall into the sea, they'll drown. It'll be no loss.
You will fly.
At least I think he was using reverse psychology. Remember, if he flies outside the designated area, he'll be shot. I was wondering how she'd test the glider's load capacity to accomplish her lofty goal. Even if they do get away with the glider, Carcia and her co-conspirators will still be free to attempt their hostile takeover. And what of that crate full of ancient military munitions? Meanwhile, Virdon and Burke are sneaking around on the cliffs below. They spot a guard above them with his rifle ready. Burke pitches a rock that hits the gorilla in the head, knocking him down and out for the count.
More fun than a no-hitter I pitched in high school.
It's another magnificent panorama of the Pacific coast as those two descend the path to the ocean. Up above, Galen is in the pilot's seat with Lyric hanging on behind him. They take a running leap and...
They're flying. I knew it would work.
Lyric is happy to be flying, but Galen's nervous about what he needs to do.
I made it happen! What nobody ever did before! You also made me kill the way no one's ever been killed before. Yep.
Konag orders his troopers to shoot the glider down. The guerrillas all fire incessantly. Some of their shots come dangerously close, with at least one actually hitting one of the glider's wooden supports. When it's obvious that the glider is going to crash, Konag orders his troops to hold their fire. Then, the glider goes crashing into the ocean.
They're dead. And so is the secret of flight.
As the apes turn to depart, Virdon and Burke swim out with a raft to rescue the downed flyers. Galen does nothing but complain of seasickness as they float out to sea.
Oh, please, get me to the shore. Quick!
Meanwhile, up at the very top of Portuguese Point, all the apes are headed back to their village. A magnificent vista of Inspiration Point standing at the opposite end of the Sacred Cove serves as their backdrop. Then, from the top of Portuguese Point, we get one final far-off glimpse of a single wooden raft floating out to sea. It's carrying Lyric, the first human aviator in several centuries. Our two human astronauts from the 20th century, Alan Virdon and Peter Burke. And one very seasick renegade chimpanzee named Galen.
As is written in the ancient Simian scrolls, the great ruler, Henry V, once said, "Once more into the breach. The humans responsible for this work of fiction should be executed for heresy. To depict a lowly human as being able to discover the secret of flight is an aberration. Everyone knows that humans simply cannot fly. Apes also cannot fly, even though there may be evidence that proves that they did in the past. If they did, if they did, there must have been a good reason for them to have stopped. The Ape Council in this episode was far too easily swayed from following the word of the scrolls. They let their guards down, and they followed the temptation put forth by that vixen. I really wish I didn't have to bring this up again. But why do they depict every gorilla as being a poor shot? When a gorilla fires 2 shots at 2 targets from no farther than 20 paces away, we should expect more than an injured hand on one of the targets. A miss at that distance is utterly disgraceful, simply unbelievable. At least the hand-to-hand combat scenes shown were a little bit closer to reality. I thought we were in for a realistic takedown when that one gorilla started throwing a human around. I was then disappointed by the end. My biggest letdown, though, was when I found out that they had completely cut a gorilla character who was supposed to be a sharpshooter. That just adds insult to injury. If you ask me, I'm glad that this series is over. I really am. In fact, it should have been stopped months ago. And that old Joe guy should be executed.
It makes me kind of sad to realize that this is the end of the Planet of the Apes series, understanding that it was cut short to only 14 episodes. So there's no real closure. But so many television series end that way. What's worse is when a series will end a season on a cliffhanger and they never resolve it. In this case, we just see our heroes floating out to sea on their raft. If this wasn't the very last episode, I'd be saying that they're floating their way toward another adventure. There are some unfilmed scripts that I haven't even read yet. I'll take a look at them. Perhaps there's enough storyline there to do a review of those. Here's a bit of trivia that I just read. The Planet of the Apes was originally supposed to air on Tuesday nights. But for some reason, and it's not explained why, one of the top dogs at CBS wanted this show buried. But why? Maybe he felt that it was too expensive with all the makeup and costumes. For whatever reason, he scheduled the show in the Friday night death slot. Planet of the Apes didn't have a chance up against NBC's top shows, Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man, and there's Kung Fu over on ABC. Also notable is the fact that there actually was an audience watching Planet of the Apes. Unfortunately, that audience was made up mostly of children who didn't matter to the advertisers. And that was similar to what happened to Star Trek. Some of the subject matter this series addressed seemed to be a bit too strong for its 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central time slot. Episode 13 dealt with a deadly gas that was meant to be used to destroy all apes. And here we have this episode with a faction of chimpanzees wanting to use deadly ancient weapons against all the other species of apes. Now that's some pretty heavy stuff for the family hour, in my opinion, especially for the 1970s. The mastermind of that scheme, Carcia, is the only chimpanzee to ever be depicted with blue eyes in the Planet of the Apes. All other ape actors either already had brown eyes or they were required to wear brown contacts. The only other blue-eyed ape in the entire Apes franchise is the orangutan Zaius. There's a gorilla addressed as Robar in the final few minutes of this episode. I'm going to figure it's Ron Stein who was playing the first gorilla. In some early drafts of the script, the role of Robar was to have been a separate one, apart from the other gorillas. His character was to be fleshed out early on in the episode, being introduced as Konag's weapons instructor, who was a crack shot with a rifle. A crack shot gorilla? Now there's an oxymoron. There's absolutely no mention of Robar anywhere in the revised script, as that role was entirely written out. My copy says that Martin Brooks is supposed to use a hand signal to have the first trooper bring the prisoner forward. The first trooper character is credited as the first gorilla, and that's a role played by Ron Stein. So did Martin Brooks mistakenly recite a deleted line, as he'd practiced it from an earlier draft? We may never know. Also, Konag had only called for the human to be brought, but Galen came along too. Now, according to the revised script, bringing Galen was the proper response to Konag's signal to the first trooper. Much is made about the oddity of Protus's strange expander, or what we might refer to as a magnifying glass, but it should have come as no surprise to Carcia. After all, the apes certainly possessed the ability to manufacture glass and to polish it into lenses, because other episodes, such as The Interrogator, have already depicted apes wearing eyeglasses. I was very disappointed that Virdon and Burke didn't find some way to take those explosives out to sea with them. They should have dumped them deep in the ocean where they would never be discovered again. I read that series co-star Ron Harper once told an interviewer that his favorite filming location was at a beach north of Malibu. He then mentioned this episode and Tomorrow's Tide as being filmed on that beach. He may have been a little confused about the shooting location, though, because based on my research, The Deception was the only episode to have been filmed on a beach that was north of Malibu. The other two beach-based episodes were listed as being filmed a little farther south at the southeastern end of Abalone Cove near Portuguese Point. Now, the location is also backed up by a quote from the stunt coordinator. He stated that the glider launch was filmed down south in Palos Verdes. Portuguese Point is in Palos Verdes. If I ever get a chance to visit California, I think I might like to check out the vistas from that site. I guess I'm kind of sad to be at the end of the series, but I'm also relieved to be able to move on to other things now that I've finished it. I do have a few summer projects lined up. I'm not absolutely certain if I want to start another long-term weekly series. I guess I'll burn that bridge when I come to it. Of course, everything will depend on my channel activity in the meantime. Lately, my viewership numbers have been dropping faster than my blood pressure after a sublingual dose of nitroglycerin. If that doesn't turn around, I might just abandon the channel. So, to the 2 or 3 of you who might still be watching, like this and the rest of my videos, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Share your suggestions for the future of the channel. Then, stick around to see where I go next on Old Joe's Reminiscence.